Heritage, History and Culture, Amman, Jordan, at facebook.com. Khateeb Château, Physiognomy changing. Construction to demolition, 1920 to 1967. Story number 18. We used to spend our time in front of. Finding means that depict, date, and location. Ahmed Al-Khateeb Château, 1920. One of Amman rare cases that witnessed construction, addition, adaptive reuse, remodeling, enlargement, rehabilitation, renovation, maintenance, and demolition. In a 47-year period of significance, 1920 to 1967. Those many alterations did not waste its historic integrity. On the contrary, they enforced its elements to a landmark even after demolition. Since 1900, the area in front of the Roman Theatre witnessed the first development of public buildings, as this 1918 aerial view shows. The Saraya was built in 1902. The Post and Telegraph Office was built in 1903, while the bridge was built in 1909, and finally the Governor Bureau in 1910. In 1920, the area witnessed two new building activities adjacent to the Governor Bureau. One to the west and one to the east. The first was the construction of Khateeb Château in 1920. This independent freestanding two-story structure, with its small enclosed garden surrounding it, was originally commissioned by an upper-class patron called Ahmed Al-Khateeb, the second mayor of Amman, between 1911 and 1915. In 1920, the architectural form and function of Al-Khateeb Château took into consideration the will of the owner to include a large reception hall and services for guests. In this regard, this chateau had a dual purpose, a residence and a host house, madafa, a building type that reflects the upper social status of the owner, where in Amman, between 1900 and 1925, there were at least 15 of them. The nearest to Al-Khateeb Château was Sulaiman Al-Bilbesi Host House. One year after its construction, in 1920, a front balcony was added to the existing building. This accessory structure to the primary facade was necessary to make the exterior architectural appearance compatible, that is, in harmony with context and social order. The functional and architectural layout, as well as the location of Al-Khateeb Château, was perfect for the new regime arriving to Amman in 1921 to repurposing it for new use, a place for royal ceremony, honors and protocol, as we have seen in the previous story when Sharif Hussein bin Ali arrived to Amman. During his stay in Amman, the king inspected the Arab Legion in front of Al-Khateeb Château in 1924. Al-Khateeb Château of 1920, completed with balcony and property walls between 1921 and 1924, as it went into some architectural changes after the visit of Sharif Hussein bin Ali. That is the first adaptive reuse of Al-Khateeb Château, which was highly influenced by social and political forces. In architecture, adaptive reuse refers to the process of reusing an existing building for a purpose other than which it was originally built or designed for. For example, converting an old train station into an office space. Fortunately, such redevelopment was not a complicated process at that time. In view of this, adaptive reuse, as well as revitalization and rehabilitation, restoration, renovation, and maintenance are the main concepts of such redevelopment, as we will see. One year later, in 1925, Al-Khateeb Château of 1920 went into modification and renovation, that is, modifying floor plans and related elevations. Again, Al-Khateeb Château of 1920 went into enlargement, that is, extending lot area beyond its existing footprint by moving front and side property lines to the south and west, respectively. And again, Al-Khateeb Château of 1920 went into alteration and remodeling, that is, demolishing the entire parapet without regard to its distinctive features or style to provide building materials to construction activities. And finally, Al-Khateeb Château of 1920 went into addition and reconstruction in that year, that is 1925, by reconstruction of service and support rooms in the western setback, accompanied by reconstruction of a new street property wall to the south. Note the three bay windows framed by arches, set side by side with a flat, rather than faceted exterior, that became an architectural motif at that time. "20 years later, in 1944, Al-Khateeb Château of 1920 went into adaptive reuse once again, from a house of royal honors to a school for kids. By now, almost every concept in architectural redevelopment was used. But wait, there is one more expression. It's deterioration. Since 1944, after the building was converted to a kids' school, it did not see any activity related to development. This was a period of neglect and lack of maintenance that led to deterioration. One of the two palm trees which were planted in 1935 died in 1949. The playground in 1960 was diminished to about 50% of its original size, and many other things. The deterioration of this building led to the necessity of demolition. The area in front of the Roman Theatre between 1962 and 1964. To reach a full account of the area, it helps if you watch story number 16, the two chapters of story number 13, and story number 15. The last construction activity in the Philadelphia hotel premises was concluded in 1962. By 1962, construction activity in the hotel premises was concluded. 5 years later, the school was demolished. And in 1968, part of the stream was covered and channelized, giving way to the widening and replanning of Al-Hashimi Street, and to the construction of the sunken terraced garden.